Well, it's 7 o'clock, Wednesday evening. Glad you're here. We continue tonight on the Beatitudes. We're going to be in Matthew 5, verse 7. When we get started in a moment. Matthew 5 and verse 7 on the Beatitudes. We'll get started with a word of prayer first, then we'll ask Lynn, would you lead some prayer? Amen. Matthew 5 and verse 7. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. If you're not merciful to others, if you don't show others mercy, then you're not going to receive any mercy. That's what he's speaking here about. That's where it comes down in this. Because in some cases, some of the Pharisees or Jewish leaders, they didn't show any mercy. They didn't have any mercy on anybody. And if you messed up, that was just too bad. Too bad. So again, Christ is teaching them something here they're not used to hearing. The people, the listeners of Sermon on the Mount, they're not used to hearing this about mercy. So here it is. They're about to learn something about mercy. And we'll see how merciful Christ was as well. When it comes to understanding what the word means, mercy means not receiving what I deserve. The word pity is close to it. In some versions, pity is substituted for mercy. So pity, not having sorrow for another's suffering. So there's a little difference there, but they're all very, very close related here. Sometimes you probably have heard somebody say, have mercy. Well, some people say that just have something to say. They don't really understand what they're saying. And then there's some people who are in a desperate situation, and they will say, have mercy. They're wanting relief from what they're going through, and they mean it, wanting relief. Well, pity there, we can have sorrow for another person's suffering. I'm sure we've done that before. Been around individuals who are in a great deal of suffering, in maybe different ways you can suffer. And does it not hurt us to see them in that condition, to see them going through that? And maybe we wish there was something that we could do. Maybe we could, maybe we cannot. Maybe the situation would determine it. But either way, this is a plea for help. Mercy or pity, one's plea for help. So those two words are used quite often in the Scriptures. One place we do find it where Christ was asked for mercy, and every time Christ was asked for mercy, he granted it. He never withheld it. When a person asked for mercy, he took care of them. In Matthew 9, in verse 27, we have two blind men who are following Christ, and they have a request. So when Jesus departed from there 2 blind men followed him, crying out and saying, Son of David, have mercy on us. They were wanting some help. They were blind. Probably these men had become blind. At some point they could see. They had become blind. That's why they were wanting to get back to their original way of seeing. That's what they probably were wanting. Doubt they were born blind. There were some in Scriptures tell us that they were. But these 2 men, have mercy, help us here. A person who's never seen really doesn't understand what he or she is missing by not seeing. But these men understood it, and they wanted to be healed of this, and Christ certainly healed them. He gave them their sight. So when these men asked for mercy, Christ was right there. He gave them mercy. He had pity on them. He helped them. Another is in Luke 10, of the Peril of the Good Samaritan. And we know that the story, man gets beat up by robbers. He's laying on the side of the road, and here comes 2 individuals, the Jewish individuals, and they just pass him by. But the one man, Good Samaritan, he does not. And in the end, Christ asks a question. So which of these 3 do you think was neighbor to him who fell among the thieves? And he said, he who showed mercy on him. Then Jesus said to him, go and do likewise. So this Samaritan showed mercy. The man needed help. Did he have to do it? No. Was he obligated to do it for this man? No. The man in the ditch probably wouldn't have showed him mercy. Him being a Jewish individual wouldn't have helped a Samaritan out. But this man did. He showed mercy. He showed pity on this person. And of course, he took care of his help, of his needs there, and man got better. Now, he had to, these first 2 could have done it. They could have showed some mercy as well. But it meant that they would have to step out of their comfort zone. Do something that they weren't necessarily familiar with doing. And that's why the one problem that when Christ confronted these Jewish individuals, Jewish leaders, they didn't like it, especially when he taught on this one, because when he was telling this, probably the listeners were thinking, oh yeah, those 2 Jewish men, they're God's people. They're going to do the right thing. The last one you would expect would be the Samaritan that would do this. They would have to step out of their comfort zone to do this, but they didn't do it. The Samaritan, apparently, he knew something about it. He knew something about putting oil on the cuts and bandaging the man up and carried him, where he knew where the hospital was, where he could be cared for. He knew there would be cost involved. He knew all that. He probably didn't step out of his comfort zone. But these other 2, they wouldn't do it. They were more focused on themselves. They were more focused on getting to where they were going. They saw the man. They wouldn't step out of the comfort zone. So here's one that you wouldn't expect that showed mercy. In Luke 16, we find the story here of the rich ruler, Lazarus, and the rich man, the rich ruler. And one thing we can get out of this story here about the rich man, there will come a time when no mercy will be given. There will be that time when one who is lost will scream out for mercy, but none will be given. Mercy is only given on this side of death. On the other side of death, it's over. No mercy, no pity will be given. And here's how we see that, Luke 16:24. Then he cried and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame. Have mercy. Help me. Couldn't be helped. It was too late. All he wanted was this stuff. A little bit of water, tip of your finger, cool his tongue. Wouldn't work. So, if you remember on back up in the story, something the rich man would not do. or he did not do. He didn't help Lazarus. It wasn't an accident that Lazarus was put at his gate. That was no accident. They knew who put him there. If anybody there could help him, this man could. If anybody there could feed him, this man could. But he wouldn't even give him the crumbs off his table. He didn't show mercy. He didn't show pity for Lazarus. And now look where he finds himself. None's being given to him. He had his chance. He had his opportunities. But he wouldn't do it. So one can cry for mercy all they want after death. Nothing to be given. It's over. In Matthew 23, we see where the Pharisees and Christ addressing them because of what they would not do. They would not show mercy. Here's what he says to them. He's pretty rough on them. Matthew 23:23. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you pay tithe of mint and nice and cunning and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. These you ought to have done without leaving the others undone. They should have been helping in justice for the individuals who didn't have a voice. They had a voice. They should have been stepping up for them, helping them, being a voice for them. But they wouldn't do that. Mercy. They should have been showing mercy for others. There were plenty of people who needed their help. They wouldn't do that. Faith. Talking about where faith should be. But they wouldn't do that. To them, you just keep the law, keep the law, keep the law. You make sure you pay your tithes here. That's all you got to do. You do that, you're fine. No, they neglected the weightier things. Justice, mercy, and faith. They should have been doing these things. So when Christ arrives on the scene, he begins standing up for the ones who had no voice. He began showing mercy. He began to build the faith in these people in God, what God was really about, what he was like. And the people noticed this in Christ, and they knew he was different. Remember what they said about Christ. No one's ever spoke like this man. And that's what they said after he got through with the Sermon on the Mount. Never have heard anybody speak like this. Now, they're going to see a lot more as he begins his work here on earth at that time. They will see all this put into practice. So we go back to Matthew 5:7. How are we doing in the mercy department? How are we doing? If we're not doing so well, what's that going to say about us in the end when we are needing God's mercy? What's that going to say? If we're not giving it out, helping, why do we think that God's going to help us? Because that's what he's saying here. The merciful will obtain mercy. The opposite is the unmerciful will not. So how are we doing? There's going to be times we're going to need mercy. We're going to need it. The Hebrew writer speaks about this, a time when we're going to need mercy, and especially from the standpoint before one becomes a Christian. Hebrews 4:16, let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. So, for the Christian, come boldly to the throne. And this does not mean arrogance. It's mean coming knowing that this is where it's at. I can get grace here. I mean, God's full of grace. He's full of mercy too. But if we go to the throne, we may obtain mercy and find grace in times of need. And for the one that's not a Christian, they really need. God's grace is there. He's provided it. And we need it. We need this. Only God can provide. Give us that mercy. For the one who is a Christian, again, when we go before God on Judgment Day, if we've been living a faithful life, there really won't be a need for mercy because everything's been cleansed. We've been washed clean of our sin. But yet there'll be times in between we're going to need help from God. We're going to need His help. Paul talks about this in Ephesians 2. It begins here about a person, describing a person before they become a Christian. And look how he describes them. Ephesians 2:1, beginning. And you he made alive, who were dead in trespasses and sins, in which you once walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit who now works in the sons of disobedience. So they became Christians, but he wants them to remember how you did once live, how you were living. You were dead in trespasses. You were dead in sin. You walked according to the world. Whatever the world was doing, that's what you were doing. You were in that. So a person who is in that condition is dead. Now he goes on to verse 3. Among whom also we all once conducted ourselves in the lust of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature children of wrath, just as the others. So again, at one time, there was no limit. Lust and desire was what ruled our life. If God was for it, we were against it. If God was against it, we were for it. You find that all the time among people. So, living in such a way, what do we deserve? Did we deserve God sending His Son to take our place? Did we deserve that? No, we don't deserve that. That's grace. We deserve, from the standpoint of no mercy, or mercy, God giving us what we deserve. That's what we need. Should have got it. But look at verses 4 and 5, Ephesians 2. But God, who is rich in mercy, because of His great love with which He loved us, even when we were dead in trespasses, made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved. So here's God who is rich in mercy, who provided this way of escape for us. He didn't give us what we deserved. He gave us what we needed. That's His grace. And He loved us enough to provide a way out. That's how much He loved us. A way to escape from the torments of hell. He did that. So if you're going to try to measure the riches of an individual, look at God. Look how He's measured. He's measured rich in mercy. He's rich in that. He's got more than enough. More than enough can He hand this out, give it out, just like His grace, to keep us from being condemned. So we go back to the Beatitude, Matthew 5:7. We are to be rich in mercy as well, because God has been merciful to us. And if we're not, then we're going to have problems. Now, Christ gives a great parable on this. He gets right down to the point, showing how we are to be merciful because God has shown mercy to us. It's in Matthew 18 with the man who owed a great amount of money to his master. In 18:24 and 25, but when he had begun to settle accounts, one was brought to him who owed him 10,000 talents. But as he was not able to pay, his master commanded him be sold with his wife and children and all that he had, and that payment be made. So this one man owed a massive amount. There's no way that he could ever repay 10,000 talents. No way. If he worked every day for the rest of his life, it can never happen. So the master says, let's put you on the auction block. He's going to sell the man, his wife, his children, Not as a family. Divide them up. Send them all over the place. All that he had. And that wouldn't even start to cover the amount that is owed from these talents. Wouldn't even cover the amount. So what does the man do? Verse 26 and 27. Then the servant therefore fell down before him, saying, Master, have patience with me, and I will pay you all. Then the master of that servant was moved with compassion, released him, and forgave him the debt. Well, that is special. A debt like that, forgiven. He forgives it. The man pleads, releases him. He goes on his way. Now, we don't have verses 28 and 29, but we know what happened next. This man here, who was given his large debt, he comes up across a man who owes him a little money. I mean a little bit. 100 denarii. 100 days' work is what he owes him. And this man who's been forgiven, he puts his hand out, where's my money? And the man basically says the same thing. Have patience with me. I'll get it to you. But the man here will not extend any mercy. Puts him in jail until he can pay it. How are you going to pay it in jail? Somebody's going to have to work. Somebody's going to have to pay it. If this man was married or whatever, he would have to do something to get payment to him. So this man's feeling pretty good. Until some of the servants of this master witnesses what's happened. And they tell their master what's happened. And this first servant's brought back in. In verse 33 through 35, it says, Should you not also have had compassion on your fellow servant, just as I had pity on you? And his master was angry, and delivered him to the torturers until he should pay all that was due him. So my heavenly Father also will do to you if each of you, from his heart, does not forgive his brother his trespasses. If we fail to show mercy, in whatever area it may be, if it's forgiveness, if we fail to show mercy, then look what's going to be coming of us. If we don't want to forgive, God's not going to forgive us. If we're not forgiven, that's it. One thing we see here, we have sinned a lot more against God than we've ever sinned against anybody. Now, there are individuals who sin against us, but that's small compared to the amount of sins that we have sinned against God. If we won't forgive these little bit here where somebody has sinned against us, they ask for forgiveness, they plead, no, I'm not going to do it. What's God going to do with ours? It's not going to go well on judgment if we fail to extend the mercy to those who ask. We must be merciful. We must show pity if we're going to do this. Now, the psalmist in Psalms 103, a good bit of that chapter, he talks about forgiveness, mercy, and that. We're going to read that and just let it sort of speak for itself. 103 and verse 1. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits, who forgives all your iniquities, who heals all your diseases. Verse 4. Who redeems your life from destruction, who crowns you with loving kindness and tender mercies, who satisfies your mouth with good things, so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. Verse 6. The Lord executes righteousness and justice for all who are oppressed. He made known his ways to Moses, his acts to the children of Israel. The Lord is merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in mercy. Verse 9. He will not always strive with us, nor will he keep his anger forever. He has not dealt with us according to our sins, nor punished us according to our iniquities. For as the heavens are high above the earth, so great is the mercy toward those who fear him. It just shows here about the mercy of God. It's tremendous. It's great. If we fear him, we're in good shape. Respect God, obey God. He will be merciful toward us. But if we're not merciful toward others, why would we expect him to be merciful to us? He's not going to be. So the beatitude, blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. We must be merciful people. We must be people who show pity when we can. Show it and step out of our comfort zone and do that. And do it. And we'll be better for it. Much better for it. Anything on mercy, on that beatitude? All right, next week we'll move on to the next one and talk about it for a little bit. The next beatitude.